United President John Dramani Mahama has drawn the battle lines for wage negotiations with striking doctors, literally telling them we can't pay and we won't pay.
I believe that government and the medical officers must continue the dialogue on conditions of service to arrive at an amicable resolution in an atmosphere that is devoid of coercion. Currently, other negotiations are ongoing on other categories of allowances at the Public Services Joint Negotiating Committee. Any agreements that are reached in respect of allowances or conditions of services would have to be appropriately captured in the budget. And I want to say for emphasis that I will not authorize any expenditure on wages and compensation not provided for in the budget.
Following a week of agitation by doctors for better conditions of service and threats to resign en masse, the President of Ghana is telling them, I will not authorize any expenditure on wages not provided for in the budget. So how is this stance likely to affect negotiations? Is this a challenge for doctors to go ahead and resign en masse as they have threatened? And is the President's show of firmness really the way to go? So what next? This is today's big story with me, Stephen Anti. Now, labor experts have described the stance of the striking doctors as holding the country to ransom with their threats. Some have even dared them to resign and leave if they can't work under their current conditions. But despite all the agitation, negotiations have continued with a view to resolving the matter involving their demands. However, today, addressing members of the Ghana Registered Midwives Association in Accra, President Mohammed said the doctors' demands have the potential of adversely affecting the single spine and could derail gains made in fiscal discipline.
Recently, government has been in discussions over conditions of service for medical officers. Even while that process was ongoing, the Ghana Medical Association has directed doctors to withdraw services to outpatients in all public facilities. We have been here before, and it all has a very familiar ring to it. In my last visit to Botswana, in my interaction with resident Ghanaian professionals, I commented on election year pressures and the temptation to yield to demands by professional groups for increased remuneration. In 2012, during the implementation of the single spine salary structure, you all remember, pressures from various groups led to award of interim premiums and other compensatory allowances whose net effect ballooned our remuneration and compensation wage bill from a little under 3 billion Ghana cedis to over 8 billion Ghana cedis. This consumed nearly 73% of total tax revenues in wages and compensation alone. The effect on the economy of that increase are still being felt up to this day, and we're managing gradually to turn the situation around. We've managed, without retrenching any public sector staff, to tame the impact of wages and compensation as a percentage of tax revenues from the high of 73% to 49% currently. Remember that the ECOWAS benchmark for achieving convergence criteria is supposed to be 35%. Mr. Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, we're dealing with a matter of equity and principle here. There are linkages and relativities between all public sector groups. Just yesterday, a friend was urging me to intervene and accede to the demand of the doctors. After all, there are only 2,800 of them, he told me. What he fails to realize is that there are 598,000 other public sector workers organized in 11 other professional groups, lined up and just waiting to see what the doctors come away with from the negotiating table before they put in their own demands. Ladies and gentlemen, this will adversely affect the single spine pay policy and could result in breaking the spine. A lot of effort has gone into implementing this new universal public service salary structure, and nothing should be done to derail it. Ironically, I'll say that if this spinal cord should break, it must not be at the hands of a group whose principal calling is rather to heal. The right to negotiate by professional groups is sacrosanct, and I believe that government and the medical officers must continue the dialogue on conditions of service to arrive at an amicable resolution in an atmosphere that is devoid of coercion. Currently, other negotiations are ongoing on other categories of allowances at the Public Services Joint Negotiating Committee. Any agreements that are reached in respect of allowances or conditions of services would have to be appropriately captured in the budget. And I want to say for emphasis that I will not authorize any expenditure on wages and compensation not provided for in the budget. Fiscal discipline requires that not a single pesewa is spent on remuneration outside what has been budgeted for. And this goes for both Article 71 office holders and those on the single spine. It goes for the President as well as the lowest public sector employee. I'm determined to hold the line no matter the political cost. Our people have sacrificed enough. We cannot afford another round of belt tightening after the electoral cycle is over. And as I said, the current IMF extended credit facility must be the last time we fall back on the IMF for any respite.
Right, let's now hear the view of Labour expert Austin Gyamfi, who is joining us on telephone now. Well, good evening, sir. We're grateful you could join us. Good evening, sir.
Right.
Yeah, so, Mr. Gyamfi, I know that your view had previously been that if the doctors are not content with their current conditions, they could choose to leave, they could resign and go. Does this appear to be the same line the president is towing now, coming out clearly to state that more like government cannot afford to pay?
Yeah, Steve, good evening, and good evening to your listeners. The issue is that the president is the one who is responsible for the entire state. All the people who are sick and go to hospital and they cannot be attended to, everybody is crying about them. You know, so he has no choice than to come out and say what he has said. And indeed, anybody, any student at all can understand that if we don't manage the physical, policies of the country well, definitely we will run into problem again. And this is what, we all must guard against. That's notwithstanding. They are supposed to be negotiating. They are not negotiating in good faith. So it's a problem, and he has to come out and say what he has said.
So really, where do you see this negotiation going? I mean, after the president has come out blankly to say that, hey, doctors, we're not prepared to pay any extra wage expenses that are not captured in the budget. So what happens next?
Definitely at this point in time, when budget is about closing, preparing for the next budget to be announced in November, and you want to trust this kind of thing upon the nation, you are obviously just trying to, create problem for everybody. So the president will be compelled to say what he has said, and anybody who wants to be a little, concerned and fair to the nation. We've suffered this thing, periodically over the years. About this time in 2005, 2007, this same thing was visited on the previous government, and it created a problem for everybody. Now we are facing the same thing again. I think the long and short of it is that I even want to blame the people who started the negotiation. They should not have comments at all, because they should have known that this is how it will end. Especially so when the doctors openly told all of us publicly that come 29th of July, if they don't agree to the negotiation the way they want it, then the whole system will collapse. So they have forewarned us that they will do it. So it is not surprising that they are doing what they are doing now. I really hold the view that it was a joke and that they were not going to do what they are doing. But knowing that is now a reality, we all have to advise ourselves. You know, but let me put it bluntly. I think that the doctors, either they agree that they are going back to work and go to the negotiation table, let them have what they can have, then they go into full-scale negotiation again another time. But to continue to inflict, you know, this kind of pains upon people, I think that is most unfair, and they will have to stop it.
Now, the president categorically mentions that going ahead to meet this demand will throw the single spine salary structure out of gear and effectively the budget as well. Is he not being too unreasonable, considering that the doctors are considered essential service providers?
Yes, I appreciate that. Essential service providers are not supposed to siphon from the coffers of the state everything. Indeed, I was at home together with all of them during the labor forum that was held there, and we all saw the picture that was painted to all of us by the Minister of Finance, and we all agreed that we should work towards, you know, reducing the level of the pay and arrears and everything up to a manageable level. Today we have found that we are in the 50s. We are not out of the woods. There is no country under the sun that you will be doing a thing like this and you can be able to develop successfully. You have to come down. The highest you can go will be about between 35 and 40%.
That's right. Of
your income, national income, being used to pay wages and salaries and related, you know, matters. By this time, we were using 70% at the time we got to home. Now it has come down. We are in the 50s, you know, late 50s. And we want to inflict this pain on ourselves again and turn around and blame governments and so forth and so on. I think the frustration is becoming too much. Maybe that's the reason why the president has to use the forum.
I can imagine the president is getting, everybody actually, not only the president, is feeling the pinch of this threat and strikes of doctors and all. But I need to ask you, before I let you go, now that the president has stated his stance on this matter, what do you think should be the posturing of the negotiating factions, both the doctors and the other parties in the negotiation?
Whatever they can, they should go to the table. And when they go to the table, what it means is that there should not be this arrangement that we would have to continue with the negotiation with them on strike. That is no negotiation. That is pressure being put on the state. I don't even want to think about government. The state, we are paying the taxes to pay everybody. And so it is unfair for the state to be inundated with pressure, with all these terrible type of things on our hands. And the sick people in the hospital are not being cared for. If they will go to the table and they cannot agree, then they should go to the Labour Commission.
That's right.
For the Commission to make a pronouncement on this issue through the compulsory arbitration. And if they think that it is too much for them and they really meant that they want to resign, then I think it's better we know today that we don't have doctors. Then we all know that we don't have doctors. But for them to be there and they're not there for us, it's double agony.
Right. Mr. Gyamfi, we're grateful for your time as always on today's big story. Thank you very much. Mr. Gyamfi, Austin Gyamfi is a labor consultant. So let's find out what the doctors are saying about this latest comment by the president. Our reporter, Matilda Wemega, caught up with the Deputy General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association, Dr. Justice Yankson.
Any well-meaning Ghanaian who understands what negotiations is, including government, should be quick to condemn that behavior. That behavior is not one that is supposed to be entertained in any country or in any industrial relations. And what people are even losing, graceful of the fact that people who are close to the state in terms of the state institution at the highest level, if they are able to leak official and confidential information out in this manner, then as a country we should be very careful the way we are going about life, because any state secret could be revealed by anybody at any time, and that is in very, very bad taste. Look, before we went into these negotiations, we all signed on to a document in writing, signed by honorable men who were negotiating, men and women who were negotiating on behalf of government, that there isn't going to be any disclosure of anything happening on the negotiating table to any third party. Unfortunately, the government team, through whatever means, ensured that these things were brought out through political apologists, as I call them, and others. And I think that is not good, because if even assuming, without admitting, that we even go to the negotiating table, is there going to be any good faith? And beyond that, we want to put on record that we dissociate ourselves from that so-called leaked document, simply because we signed on to a document not to do that, and we haven't done that.
So are you saying that the content of that leaked document doesn't reflect the...
I said I will not give credence to anything. That is why I put in the caveat that, assuming without admitting that was even the content, what is wrong with it? Go out there into the... Look, please, it is not some who are saying. Go out there to the public institutions and find out what other officers are getting. And assuming we said that a consultant, when we say a consultant, we are referring to somebody the stature of Professor Kwabena Frimpong, the renowned heart surgeon. If, assuming we even ask for 100 gallons of fuel at the initial stage, as in the proposal, subject to whatever will be determined finally, what is wrong with it? These so-called political apologists, how much fuel don't they draw from the state? I'm very sure that you've seen a document moving around, supposedly leaked as well, that ministers get 45 gallons per week. Multiply that by 4, that is 180. So assuming Professor Frimpong, who everybody in Ghana will accept that he's contributed so much to this country, these are the people we are talking about, the consultants. There are other consultants. But assuming he is even getting 100 and the minister is getting 180, what is wrong with it? We know the backgrounds of some ministers. Some were juniors in school. Some even taught Professor Kwabena Frimpong, but some even taught some of the ministers. So if today, assuming that minister, who is a student of his, and in no comparison when it comes to professional lines, is getting 180 and he gets 100, assuming, what is wrong with that? And please go to all the state agencies, from Bank of Ghana, Judicial Service, Ghana Revenue Authority, WAEC, what have you. Go and see the conditions under which people are enjoying whatever they are doing for the state. Go and see how much fuel is giving them. And publish that bit as well. Why didn't the government side also publish the so-called ridiculous positions they presented in the beginning? I, as an employee, no law compels me to work for any employer. So if I think that the conditions under which I'm working is not the best for me, I am ready to quit and go do anything, including petty trading, because I believe that there's more dignity doing something that at least I have my peace of mind. They can go and do their political propaganda as they are doing. We are professionals. They don't go into the theaters with us. They don't go into the consulting rooms with us. They don't go into the OPDs or the emergency rooms with us. We have put what we think is fair to ask from the employer to the employer. It is up to the employer to decide whether to sit down with us and ensure that we come to some compromise positions on things, or he leaves it as it is, and we also think about ourselves. We are Ghanaians. We know what is happening in the country, but we still also see what is happening around us.
Right, so that's it. Is the president technically, we're asking if the president is technically saying doctors can go to hell or resign en masse if they want. You heard the doctors saying that their demands are fair. Let's get onto the line, on the other line. Kofi Bento is Vice President of Imani Ghana, is joining us now. Mr. Bento, good evening.
Good evening.
The doctors appear to suggest that their demands are fair. and that like other political office holders and other government workers, they deserve better remuneration. But here the president has kind of drawn the battle lines for them to say, hey, we can't continue to pay, and that if we pay, we will throw the budget out of gear and we will destroy the gains we've made through fiscal discipline. Do you think this head-on collision from the president with the Ghana Medical Association is good now?
Well, in short, I'll say it's unfortunate, but I would not say I am surprised. All right? And I would also say that maybe the president should have simply said that the budget cannot handle this, instead of maybe saying other things that he said. Because immediately you go that direction, people will refer you to other people who may be contributing less than doctors, but who are drawing more. Okay, and we live in a time in our country where people whose production is of dubious quality, and whether they are producing anything of worth at all, okay, are really in our ears on a daily basis. And that is making some of the dynamics around these discussions, okay, very difficult. So maybe the president would have found the words to put it in a certain way. The truth of the matter is that the budget cannot handle the request.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what the president is saying.
And I am agreeing with the president, but I'm saying something. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm listening.
You know, we need to appreciate that what the doctors are asking for is not unreasonable.
Okay.
But what the president is saying is also true. Now, you get to a situation where you have two conflicting things, and we must find it within ourselves to accommodate that ambivalence, at least philosophically.
That's right.
And when we accommodate that, figure out how to work our way out of it. So the point I'm making is that both of them are right. Now, how do we deal with this? We should first appreciate that going about this as if it's a win or lose arrangement is going to just ratchet up, you know, the emotions, and we will not get anywhere. What we should appreciate is this whole paradigm of government employing doctors and paying them from a central position is not sustainable. Okay? The future will not allow us to have that. And that is not just for doctors. We'll have the same thing in universities, we'll have the same thing in other places, in polytechnics, and many other places where the government is the employer. And that is why we have said over and over again, which is also why I am not surprised at what is going on, that we need to respect the relationship between doctors, lecturers, and government as employer-employee. It is just not the right one for the kind of
I was saying that the doctors refer constantly to the fact that other incentives being drawn by other public workers, especially presidential staffers and things, some drawing as much as 180 gallons of fuel a month, makes it look like the doctors' demands are unreasonable. So I'm asking really that way forward, moving on, what should be the posturing of negotiations from both sides so that, one, we don't collapse the budget and the economy and destroy the single spine, and yet also we don't lose sight of the fact that the doctors provide a very essential service to this country?
Right. Okay. The way forward should be first to accept that it is absurd under the present arrangement to be giving people with questionable productivity the kinds of perks and salaries they are getting, and not to say that doctors don't deserve the same. It is absurd. So a lot of change has to go on. Look, if you catch the mind that one of the things we said when we had all these, salary changes in Parliament and across the executive was that it was going to make negotiations difficult. This is what we are saying today. So let's get it right. If we want a way forward, we have to admit that under this present arrangement, a doctor deserves everything that the doctors are asking for. They save lives. What do other people do? And then if you talk about going forward, this country cannot spend more than 70% of its revenue paying 600,000 people. It is just not smart. So we need to reset this whole arrangement of government employing all the people and having to pay them from a central location. Okay? We need to get towards devolution. We need to appreciate that hospitals must and should be able to. They will, in future, have to do it. So they better start now. They must hire all the human resources they need and work with them within a certain budget. And if government wants to support the hospitals, it should give them a certain subvention based on their output. There are ways to do this. It is not rocket science. That is the future. We must go there.
Right. So here is a situation. It's like, doctors, you deserve what you're asking, but as a country, we can't afford you. So what's going to happen from now? If the doctors, for example, decide to go ahead with their threat to resign en masse, what situation are we likely to see?
Well, look, this is where you need leadership and a lot of wisdom. Because as far as I'm concerned, the doctors being right in their demand, okay, should not back down just because we cannot afford it. Again, especially because we can see other people with questionable productivity getting even more or the same, as what they're asking. So what do you do? I have made a suggestion before that we need to accept, if possible, the resignation of the doctors and re-engage them on a different system, even if it means paying them hourly. Okay? If a doctor is worth 500 cedis an hour, pay him. There are many sources that we are wasting, all kinds of revenue that we are wasting. And if you go through the, books at Kolebu and you read the audit reports at other hospitals and, some of these places, you'll be amazed at the waste and corruption going on.
Right.
I think it is possible for us to pay doctors what they are worth. But we must also appreciate that going forward, we cannot make this segregation between a certain political elite and the rest of us so wide, okay, that people begin to question, why am I getting what I'm getting? When somebody who clearly is not doing more than me
is getting more.
What they are getting.
Mr. Bento,
we need to reset all that.
Mr. Bento, we're grateful for your time, such insightful suggestions there. I'm very positive that this discussion will go on and on and on until we get an amicable settlement to this impasse. My name is Stephen Enti, and we're grateful that you could join us on today's Big Story. We'll be right back with Joy News Interactive. Do stay.